Welcome to the Ultimate Hockey Show. Here, our season finale, almost a month late, but we are getting it done. Various travel, vacations, and trips have pushed the show a lot further along the line than it
Yeah.
usually is intended. But we are here. We are here to talk about hockey. The dust has somewhat settled here for the NHL offseason. Sort of, although there's a lot of moving parts still. But what we are talking about is our season finale of the Ultimate Hockey Show. I'm Michael Dell in the middle of nowhere, joined by Rich Petty. As always, Rich, how has your last month been? I know you've been a globetrotter yourself. I went on a
That's
trip
correct.
shortly after you came back, and now we're here.
Yep. Yep. No, it's been good. I've been very busy. I've worked a lot. I've traveled, and yeah, it's been good. I can hardly remember hockey. What is hockey? I mean, I've been swallowed up by CFL football and Major League Baseball, and the Jays uh, folding up their tents for this year, and yeah. So
That being said, you do remember there was a Game 7 the night we did our last show between Florida and Edmonton, and Florida won the game 2-1, as you
yes,
recall.
yes. Do we
Um,
want to go? Do
just
we
the
want to
fun
go?
on the Florida Panthers, just the fun on the Florida Panthers winning the Stanley Cup.
Well, it is. Exactly as I predicted at the beginning of the season. I said it would be Dallas and Florida in the final, and Florida winning. And I was off on Dallas by one round because Edmonton snuck by him. But I picked Florida in 7, by the way. And how many games did Florida win in? 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So, but Florida
yeah.
played that. Actually, it was very interesting how that whole series. It was back like the Panthers won the first 3 games, and you could argue Edmonton, they didn't really have their offensive mojo. They didn't get a lot of power plays. Um, the defensive style of Florida really hampered them. Um, Bobrovsky played out of his mind. One of those 3 games, I can't remember if it was game 1 or game 2. They were outshot Florida, and they still won the game. So it was all on him. And then the next 3 games was Edmonton running up the score, offense, offense, offense. Florida's defense went bye-bye. And then Edmonton wins 3 games in a row handily. Now you get to game 7 and you wonder, what is it going to be? And it turns out both teams, which is a lot of times what happens in game 7, you don't play to win, you play not to lose, which was, I think, the case. Edmonton, they didn't, in my opinion, they didn't play their game. They played very defensively. They didn't get any power plays. I don't even know if there was maybe there was one. There wasn't a lot of power play opportunity
Yeah,
for
there
Edmonton.
was one or two, and it was very
I think it was maybe
they
only
were
one.
very limited.
And Florida gets one. Well, they had a few chances to score, but they came down. The guy had a good shot. He shoots on the short side. He beats Skinner. They go up 1-0, and that's the game. They win. So literally, Edmonton was within 1 goal in the 7th game. Like that, literally that game. And I'm not saying Florida was that much better than Edmonton. I'm
Yeah.
not. I thought he'd win, but I'm saying it could have easily gone the other way. You could have had, Hyman or Draisaitl come down in a 2-on-1, shoot the puck, short side, score, and Florida can't do anything, and Edmonton wins 1-0. Like it was that close. That close, the difference.
Yeah,
That's
and Rich,
heartbreaking for
as
me.
you recall, the Oilers had, if you recall too, the Oilers have had some chances in the last 6 minutes, and none greater than the one on Zach Hyman stick. But it happened. Bobrovsky was better than Skinner on that night, and as is often the case in a one-off, but the team that gets the breakaway, gets the 2-on-1. Just however you want to phrase it, to go their way, they win the game. And historically most game sevens. Rhett. I mean, Vancouver lost to Boston. They got shut out, but the Leafs and Bruins were the 2-1 that game seven. Calgary lost to, to Tampa Bay 2-1 in game seven in 2004. The Oilers lost in 06 2-1 in game seven. In Raleigh, it's when it gets to a game seven, not much sort of separates winning from losing, and that's the anguish, I guess, of being in a cup final. One team's got to win, one team's got to lose, but man, has Florida taken a hit on their hockey team since that ended. Brendan Montour, among other pieces, no longer there.
Yeah, he's with the Kraken.
What do you think of? Sorry,
he's with the Kraken.
Yeah,
he's with the
Kraken. Yep. Recently had his day with the cup. He brought it to a First Nation, but is very close to his heart. I also saw Stephen Lawrence had a day with the cup last week. So the winds of change in hockey have blown quite significantly. Obviously, the big news for the Oilers, they lose the cup. Ken Holland not retained as general manager and president of hockey ops. They let his contract expire. Jeff Jackson takes over as interim general manager. They've named the general manager. We'll talk about that sort of earlier on, or later on, I guess, in this sequence. But they've done a good job of the Oilers in retaining key pieces of their cup run, which maybe leads you to believe that they might be trying to, bring the band back together. But I think they also made a sneaky trade and trading Ryan McLeod, among other pieces, to Buffalo in exchange for a guy that is popular in this neck of the woods in Matthew Savoy, who's a local Alberta kid. His plays from in nearby St. Albert. What do you make of what Jeff Johnson has done with this team prior to recently naming a general manager? To me, they've done as good a job as they possibly could, retaining the band. Yes, they bought out Chad Campbell, for some cap flexibility, but they were able to bring Henry back. They were able to, large portions of their team still intact.
Yeah, and they signed Victor Arvidsson from LA.
Yep, that too. And then they ended up losing another player whose name escapes me at the minute to LA. Name escapes me for the minute. It was Arvidsson. Arvidsson, one of the free agent, and one of the other Oilers who was a free agent went to LA as well.
Desjardins?
No, sorry?
Was it the defenseman at Desjardins?
No, it
was it
somebody else.
Desjardins?
No, Desjardins, the defenseman, went to Vancouver.
Oh, Vancouver, right.
So he stays within the division. But
yeah,
what do you think of what the Oilers have done so far, Rick?
Yeah, they did good. They also signed Josh Brown 2 to 3 years at $1 million a year. I'm just looking through here what the Oilers did. Yeah, they signed Colin Hedelia too to be a backup goalie. They re-signed Corey Perry. What else? Yeah, they did. Listen, every team is going to go through some changes. I mean, like you say, right from the worst team in the league right up to the team.
Thank you, Rob.
Pardon me?
Warren Foegele was the player that signed in LA as a free agent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
But every team is going to go through some
let's
changes.
go further in because it's German, but
Yeah.
no. So Warren Fogle goes to LA. Thanks, Rob, for the correction. We'll get to some of your other comments shortly when we talk about the local hockey team. Now, to the matter at hand, and I don't know how you want to address this, but I do feel like it needs to be talked about somewhat. The Oilers naming Stan Bowman their new general manager. Um, Stan Bowman was, of course, part of that Chicago management team, but was unemployed after the incident involving former player Kyle Beach. Now has since been working on going through various programs and making himself working on himself, I guess, for lack of better explanation, and has since been reinstated by the National Hockey League along with Joel Quenneville as well for hire again after a few years away from the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure at how you feel about this. Um, there is a large portion of the hockey world that seems to disagree among the fans about, going to, coming back from such an incident, not reporting the incident. I know it was a discussion point here for a time because Kevin Cheveldayoff, our current general manager, was also an assistant general manager in Chicago at the time. Where do you sit on the whole Kyle Beach bat or no, pardon me, not Kyle Beach, sorry, Stan Bowman, Joel Quenneville being able to seek National Hockey League employment once again after a few years away?
I don't know. Like, is that like an unforgivable sin?
No, I don't think it is, but I'm just asking you because there's a lot of like for me, I I believe in forgiveness and second chances, but there's a large portion of the percentage of the fan base out there or fan bases that um don't feel that he should right away because of his actions be pedestaled into a top five general manager job in the NHL, which the Edmonton Oilers job
Yeah.
seemingly is.
Right. I should
So
clarify
my
that.
question is there too much being made about this? I guess.
Okay, so let me say this. Ken Holland wasn't pushed out. Ken Holland retired. Ken Holland
No.
did not want to be general manager. He
Yes.
said this at the beginning of the year before the Oilers made it to the Stanley Cup final that he wasn't going to be back. So that was all agreed upon, mutual. The Oilers didn't know who they were going to have as general manager. Stan Bowman's name came up after he was reinstated, right? So that's number one. Number
Yep.
two, I think we had this discussion before about those 4 or 5 junior players in that situation in London, and I don't want to get into this big morality discussion, but I'll just say it like this:
Right.
if I was a young dad today, if I was 20 years ago and my girls were not girls, they were boys, would I want them to get into hockey? Yes, I'd want them to get into community club hockey because I'd want them to learn how to skate and how to play and how to make friends and have fun. Would I want them to get into competitive, higher level, like AAA, like at 13, 12, 13, 14 years old? Would I want them to get into that scene and see where they could go? I'm not sure I'd want to. Hockey has this, and I'm not saying anything. If this is surprising to anybody that's listening, then you have no idea. You don't really know what you're talking about, and you don't really know because I lived it. I had friends that lived it. I know about it. Hockey players live in a very unique world. They are told from a very young age that you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. And they are, because out of all the parents that think their sons are going to make the NHL, it's maybe one in 10,000 of all the kids that play, right? So you have to be a very special child to be a Connor McDavid or a Sidney Crosby or a Leon Draisaitl or a Connor Bedard. You choose your player. And I'm sure a lot of those boys come from really good homes. They're really good. They got their heads screwed on right. They have good mentors. They come from good families. Their parents teach them right from wrong, and it's good. But the environment that they're in, that whole environment, is a dirty, scuzzy, there's an underside to it that's not good. And it's about the guys thinking that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. They get that fed into their egos. And then there's a culture that's there about you can get whatever you want when it comes to money, drugs, power, fun, fame, and included in that is sex and girls. And so that whole thing, that whole environment, it's kind of scuzzy. And because of that, these kids, they grow up now. Again, I'm not talking about every hockey player, because there's many hockey players that can rise above it, can stay out of it. But if you go looking for it and you don't have a good moral compass as a young man, you can get caught up in it. Those 4 boys in London, or 5 guys in London, they got caught up in it. I don't know what's going to happen in this trial. Even if they don't get into trouble criminally, everybody knows what they did morally and ethically was scuzzy. And I'm saying that's the environment that hockey has bred. This is not an isolated incident. It happens lots, but lots of girls, they don't know, they don't remember, they don't have the courage to mention it. And then you get boys like this hockey player in Chicago. It's the same situation, but it's just same sex, where a coach starts to exploit, just like the Sheldon Kennedy and all those other boys, and Thurin Fleury were with that. Who is that guy in Saskatchewan? I can't even remember. I don't even want to mention his name. But that coach there that exploited those young boys for his.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's the same thing. Graham something Graham or Graham something.
Graham James.
Graham James. There you go. And
Graham James.
It's the same thing with this assistant coach or this AHL coach for the Blackhawks. It's the same thing. Now, it happens, and it's not right. But the problem is hockey has created this environment, and now these guys get caught up in it. Now you got Stan Bowman, you got some kid says, "Oh, this coach, blah 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 blah." Now, do you throw the book at your coach? Do you call the cops in? I think you want to keep things quiet. You want to settle things internally. I get it. You don't want to bring a bad thing, but is it wrong? Yeah, it's wrong. You should have gone to the cops. You should have fired that guy right away, and you should have completely separated yourself from him. But you know what? That was 10 years ago, at a time when maybe it's not like it is today. If that happens today, I think it gets exposed right away, just like it does in London with those 5 junior players. And I think that's the way it's going to be. So maybe my point is, it's not great. Hockey has created that culture. Now hockey is going to have to fix that culture. And it's going to take situations like what happened with Stan Bowman and with Quenneville and with these 5 junior players. And maybe these guys are going to think twice, like, yeah, maybe I can exploit girls and put something in their drink and have my fun and videotape it. Maybe that's wrong. Shocker. And the same thing with Bowman and Quenneville. Maybe now when a young player, a prospect comes and says, you know what? One of the assistant coaches, he talked with me inappropriately. He touched me inappropriately. He said or did something inappropriate. It shouldn't right away be, oh, let's circle the herd and protect the coach or whatever. But it's maybe we talk to that coach immediately and we address it right away, not just because it's bad publicly and for our logo and for our sport, but it's wrong morally and ethically. So there, I'm on my moral high horse, all that to say. But now that all being said, Stan Bowman is a good hockey guy. Now, is it fair? Yeah, okay. He paid the price. How much do you want to pay for the guy? The guy maybe didn't handle it right. Okay, looking back, if you asked him, he'd probably say, you know what? I probably should have handled it better. But in hindsight, it's 2020, and back then we were maybe just protecting the NHL and the Chicago Blackhawk brand and everything else. And now, if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't do it. Okay, I can give him, we all learn. I learned from life. I'm not the same man I was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You're probably not the same man you were 10 years ago.
Nor am I.
We hopefully we get better and we get smarter and we get a little bit more conscious of things and realize that things are wrong that maybe before we would have let slide. So I got to give Stan Bowman the benefit of the doubt. I think he deserves to be back in the NHL again. I don't think the Oilers are making a mistake. And I guarantee you, if this comes up in Edmonton that some young player says somebody treated me inappropriately or said something wrong, I think it's going to get addressed right away. So that's my opinion.
Well,
so
how about listen,
how about you?
I
Do you
listen.
think that he gets another chance?
Yeah, no, listen, I listened to that press conference, and what I took from it was a guy that was remorseful, a guy that's learned, a guy that wants to use what he spent the last couple of years working on. He's working in the industry of, eliminating that stuff from the game. And I really thought a guy that was remorseful for that. And Sheldon Kennedy signed off on Stan Bowman getting this job in Edmonton. So, right, as far as I'm concerned, that's good enough for me for now. And future actions will be judged when appropriate.
Yeah. And let me add this. Too.
Yep.
I don't know Sheldon Kennedy personally. He played for the Jets. I remember watching him play. I thought he was a pretty good player. And then we found out all these things that he went through afterwards that hurt his career and hurt him psychologically. And he probably, you become a recoverer. You're recovering from this for the rest of your life because it's so influential as a young person. But you know what? I have to give credit to Sheldon Kennedy because you know what? Some people would say he doesn't deserve a second chance or blah, blah, blah. And Sheldon Kennedy has enough grace and enough humanity in him to say, you know what? I'm willing to give Stan Bowman another chance. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm willing to hear him say sorry. And you know what I mean? Like some people could hold that grudge forever. And Sheldon Kennedy is one to say, you know what? I went through that. And yet I'm willing to give Stan Bowman. Stan Bowman, remember, Stan Bowman and Joel Quenneville are not the Graham Jameses of this situation. That's the coach. That's the one who did it, right? They're the ones kind of caught up in it afterwards and how much they knew, how much they're culpable for. That's hard to say. You can't get into a person's head, right? But they're not the same as the perpetrator. The perpetrator, whoever that guy is that ended up doing all that to that Chicago Blackhawk prospect, he should never be able to be hired in the NHL again. It's like Graham James. He is not able to coach young women or young men ever again. You can't be with young children. You can't be with young men. We forgive you. You've done your sentence, but we're not going to put you in that same situation again. And it's the same thing with this guy. He has defaulted himself as the one who committed it. You've defaulted yourself from being an NHL coach or a junior coach or anything, being with young men. Sorry, you're not allowed. But Bowman and Quenneville, because they're one step removed, for me, I give them another chance. I give them the chance to redeem themselves and to make things right. So I'm hoping for Edmonton that everything works out okay. And honestly, I think these situations, like what happened with those 5 junior players, what happened with Chad Kelly there with the Argonauts, with what he did with that athletic therapist, with the football team, and now Stan Bowman and the Chicago thing. These are good things. I mean, they're awful that they happen to these people, but they're good because they shine light on things that are wrong. And people say, you know what? We've got to do better. We've got to make things better. We have to make things right, morally and ethically. We still want hockey players to be hockey players, but they can be hockey players without being moral degenerates who put drugs into girls' drinks in order to film what you do with them when they're completely incapacitated. That has nothing to do with being a hockey player. That has to do with being a moral degenerate. And I just wish hockey would be a little bit harder to take that crap out of the hockey and take that out of whatever it is that's in hockey and make hockey just great for young people, young men and young women, that they can enjoy it. And the cream of the crop can play in the NHL without all this garbage. Because, that case that's in London, all that does, it makes hockey players look bad. It makes hockey look bad. It makes the NHL look bad. It makes junior players look bad. It makes the Canadian national team look bad. What is anything good of that? There's nothing good from it. But yet, I blame hockey as a whole, because hockey has created that culture. And that's been around since before I was born. It was when I was a kid. I just touched it. I didn't go into that level of competitiveness at that level, but it just surrounded me in the edges. And then I got out of hockey, not for that reason, for other reasons too. But anyway, I'm just saying hockey's now got to deal with it. They made that bed. Now they've got to not sleep in it. They've got to clean that bed up, and they've got to fix it up, and they got to clean out whatever has to be cleaned and change things. And they can do it with the right people. It can be done. So anyway, there's my speech. That's my moral platitude. I'm done. Look, that was almost a half an hour wasted on that thing, but it was good.
It's okay. It's okay. It's a very important discussion to be had. Obviously, we're not going to be able to touch on everything today, because I still want to touch on what the Winnipeg Jets have done or haven't done or will do, and woulda, coulda, shoulda, and we have off season. And go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, though, if we're going to wrap up the season, I know we were talking about Oilers and Florida. We had our little hockey pool.
Yeah.
You jumped out. We were tied after the first round. You jumped out 2 points ahead of me after the second round, 3 points ahead of me after the third round, and I kind of conceded. And then I said, okay, well, I don't think I can win either way. But then with the final pick, which someone might argue is the most important pick, the Stanley Cup winner, that should be worth 30 points, which then throws the other 3 rounds out. I got 2 points and you got 0. So final total at the end of our pool, you ended up with 14 and me with 13. So I give you the slow clap. Congratulations. And if I had a hat on.
And I bow, because it's been years in the making.
It's been a while.
That being said, Rick, that being said, just wanted to make mention as well quickly with something that the Nashville Predators have done. They have gotten Steven Stamkos, among other toys, for Barry Trotz and their coaching staff. She trusted the general manager, but toys led by Stamkos. Zaro's got a brand new contract. Yossi's still there. What have you thought of what the Nashville Predators have done?
What else? No, they signed somebody. They signed a good player from the Vegas Golden Knights. One of their, I think.
They got Marchessault too.
Correct, and I think they signed a defenseman too. Did they not? Did they not get another defense? I thought they got.
Yeah, they signed one of the top defensemen as well.
But
so, what do you think of what the Nashville Predators have done?
Well, yeah, they needed to score. I mean, they were a good team last year, but they didn't score enough goals. So bringing in Marchessault is a 40-goal scorer. Stamkos scored 40 last year. Yeah, I think their power play will be much better. It was already pretty good last year with Yossi on the back end quarterbacking it. But
the defenseman they got was Brady Ski from Carolina.
From Carolina, right. So now you got a power play that's got Stamkos, Forsberg, Marchessault, Yossi, and whoever else you want to put on that. That's not a bad first power play. That'll score a lot of goals, that thing. So I think all it does, you know what? It puts the Jets in a tougher spot because everybody's getting better. Chicago's going to be a little bit better. I think Minnesota is going to be a little bit better. I think the Predators are going to be a little bit better.
Utah's going to be better.
Utah's going to be better. The Stars are going to be just as good, although they lost Pavelski to retirement. But
Utah actually picked up Medel Sergachev, which was a bit of a surprise in the draft day trade.
The Lightning, you're talking about how great or how improved the Predators are. The other side is the
Yeah.
Lightning. Wow. They have, I think that window, I was reading last year, they were talking about that window for the Lightning closing and closing. I mean, they still have some good players in Hedman and Kucherov, but I just think that team has gotten older. Well, and they also have Point too, but I'm just saying they've gotten older. They've lost. I think their window's closed. I think they'll be a good team. They'll probably be a playoff team, but are they a Stanley
Yeah.
Cup contender? I'm not so sure anymore. Whatever, but
Yeah, there's a difference, right? And I'm sure we know this in Winnipeg. There's a difference between being a playoff team and being a perennial championship team.
mhm.
And even regular season, the playoff team is a pretty significant ad. Anyway, let's get to the local team. Obviously, the Winnipeg Jets losing some pieces while gaining some pieces. Let's start in goal. Most notably, Connor Hellebuyck has a new backup after Laurent Passois moves on to greener pastures with another organization. In comes Capo Cassidy from San Jose and old friend Eric Comrie. Brendan Dillon also leaves the team, as does bio candidate Nate Schmidt. He went to Florida. The
And
Jets have not. Sorry?
and they also lost
Sean Monahan to
Monahan
Columbus.
and Tyler Toffoli to San Jose.
To San Jose, yeah. What do we think of this sort of reconstruction reformation project, if you will?
Restoration, reformation. I like that. You're using a medieval religious connotation. That's good. I like that.
Listen, I refuse to say it's a rebuild, but they have maybe drastically, I guess, reshaped their team.
Well, have they reshaped it, or has it just by circumstance now forced to be reshaped? Maybe that's how we should look at it.
That's fair. Now, are you in the scenario that Brad Lambert comes in here and is playing for the number 2 center this fall?
Yeah, I've heard them talking. It'll be Nemestikov. It'll be Lambert. It could be Perfetti. Although I've just heard the coaches say that they prefer Perfetti on the wing, which I mean his natural spot is center, but he's just not big enough in the NHL. He gets shoved around too much. You have to be a little bit larger. And on the wing, he can be more crafty. He's very good with the puck. He sees the ice well. I think he'll always be a left winger. In my mind, I just think he's never going to be a centerman unless he really bulks up and plays with a little bit more of a nasty edge, because he's otherwise I just think he's going to get shoved around a lot, especially in the playoffs. But that being said, I agree. There's one of the comments here from one of the listeners is I agree on the forward side. We lost Monahan. That's a big hole to fill. Second line center, and the Jets, they played the whole year without a second line center, and then they just got Monahan right before the trade deadline, not right at it, but a little bit before it. And then the huge hole on defense is Brendan Dillon. I agree. Because he added a level of edge, toughness, whatever you want to call it. And so now what are you going to do? I agree with you. I think the Jets, they're gonna develop. This is gonna have to be from the inside up. That's, I don't know what other phrase to use, but I think the coaches were talking about it, or Cheveldae talking about it, and it's true. Teams go through change, and when you lose players, which is inevitable, what do you got to do? You got to give opportunity to young guys to play. Ville Heinola made the team last year, and he snaps his ankle the last exhibition game before the season starts, and his whole season goes.
Fair enough. Yep.
Yeah. So what are you going to do about it? It happens, right? But is Heinola an NHL player? I believe he is. He's as good as, well, he was good as Schmidt, and Schmidt played a whole lot of games last year, and now Schmidt's not here anymore. So I'm just saying, and then Logan Stanley, you and I have talked about Logan Stanley. I got friends who rag me. They say, Rick, how can you know what? He may never be a Victor Hedman. Okay, fine. But you know what? We're never going to know unless you play him a lot. And I think the fans have got to get this mindset, just like it was when they brought in Paul Maurice and they said, you know what? We're going to have a few years where we maybe dip a little bit or we have an ebb before we have a flow again, where we've got to let young players develop. That's all we have. We can't sign free agents. I mean, they're not going to say it. Nobody wants to come here, but we've got our guys. Let's let them play, win or lose. Let's see what we got. And Heinola, in my mind, Heinola and Stanley have to play. They cannot be the seventh defenseman. That can be for Colin Miller. He's a veteran. They gotta get, in my mind, I don't know about you. You can make your comments. I think Heinola and Stanley.
No, I 100%
Hey,
agree. That's why I'm not.
Heinola and Stanley have to play every exhibition game, and then they play to start the regular season, and they play in meaningful minutes. And you maybe have. Okay, so you have now Morrissey and DeMello in your first pairing. I think you got to play Samberg and Pionk. Unless you move Pionk, you got to have Samberg and Pionk in your second pairing. And then you got to have Heinola and Stanley in your third pairing. And you have Colin Miller and who else? They signed all these other defensemen here. Who else? They signed a Fleury, right? They signed
Hayden Fleury.
And then a Simon Lundmark. They signed a whole bunch of guys, kind of all for the minimum price contracts there, the $775, sort of the minimum NHL contract. So those guys can all be AHL, NHL guys like what Stanley and Heinola have been the last few years. But in my mind, Heinola and Stanley have to play on your third pairing. That it just has to be. They have to play regularly in order to see what they got, because otherwise we're never going to know.
Do you worry about, in your scenario, putting those two on a pairing and them getting exposed?
But they're the third pairing. How much are they, like, they're not going to play at least to the beginning of the season? No, they got to play. They've played in the NHL. They're good enough.
No, and I'm not saying they're not going to play, but do you not put Samberg with somebody and Pionk with somebody to try to buoy the losses?
Well, okay, sure. I guess you could play Stanley in the second pair. Well, if you call him second pair, you could call him 2A and 2B. You could play Pionk as the right-hand shot. You could play him with Stanley, and you could play Samberg with Heinola. Sure. And just try to evenly flow the defense minutes between the three pairings. Sure, you could do that. But those six guys have to be your top six, barring some trade or signing or whatever. I mean, the Jets signed was a Simon Lundmark here. Who else did they got? Who else did they sign?
Yeah, he Simon Lundmark, Hayden Fleury, and all those guys. They're Moose guys.
Yeah, because he's got a 2-way contract. Lundmark does. Let me see who else.
Yeah,
Colin Miller has a 1-way, and then also Coughlin, Dylan Coughlin. He's on a 2-way contract. I think so is Fleury, not Miller. I think Miller's on a 1-way, or he's on a. Yeah. See, and that's another thing. Yeah. Same thing with Dave. In my mind, all these opportunities have opened up. A guy like Hayden Fleury, also a 2-way contract. Yeah. Guy like Mason Shaw, 2-way contract. They're all on entry-level contract. I'm saying a guy like Gustafsson, in my mind, he's another guy we have to see more of. I don't care. Like, let them play. They're not like, if we go a whole year with them in the lineup and they do nothing, okay, fine. But how are we going to know if we just never give them opportunity? We always put them in lousy opportunities and get them to play 6 minutes a game. I mean, in my mind, you're not going to develop playing 6 minutes a game. You might as well then be playing in the AHL, where you've got a regular rotation and you're playing a lot more minutes and more meaningful minutes. So I don't know. That's in my mind, just in general, unless the Jets do some sort of a blockbuster trade and they trade away Ehlers and bring in some first pairing defenseman from some other team. If that happens, I'm not saying it should, but if that would happen, then it's different. But otherwise, those 6 guys got to play. That's my opinion. Unless you have something else. What do you think? Who do you think the top 6 should be? Right? As
no. I 100% agree. I wonder where Codwin fits into this picture. Maybe he's the 7th or the 8th defenseman, or Colin Miller finds a way in. But I think that is. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Colin Miller has the one-way contract, whereas Coughlin and Fleury have
So
two-way contracts.
it's interesting, right? Because we used to have these discussions about, I'm not just limiting this to the defense, I'm limiting this to the whole team, where there was maybe spots on, first and second forward into the lineup, first and second D, your extras, for lack of a better term. There wasn't really a roster spot staked out for guys to earn in cap the last number of years. The thing that I think intrigues me is, and several day I've said as much, that if I'm a Winnipeg Jets prospect, I'm really liking my chances of working, really hard to earn a spot, because there's going to be spots here to be had. I think that's the really intriguing part about this season. Whereas in the past, it seemed like everybody came into camp, you were locked into your spot, and you were given your spot unless catastrophic things happened. This year, I would say that I would put Logan Stanley and I would put Billy Hanaway into this conversation. I think realistically, there's 5 or 6 spots out of camp that are there for somebody to take, like the Simon Lundmarks of the world, like the Hayden Fleury's of the world. And yes, I think the Jets have Hanela and I think they have Stanley penciled into those spots, but they have to come into camp and earn them and not lose them. Because I think for the first time in a while, we have a really good competition going here, and I think it extends up front as well. Whether that's putting Vladi and Mestikov as the 2 center to start, whether that's Gabriel Velarde as the second line center, and you move other things around. But there's going to be some opportunity on the 3rd and 4th lines to do some things, depending on what happens with Nick Weiler. So, yeah, it looks like on paper the Jets, took a step back, but I don't think it was for lack of trying. And I think the fans that wanted a full-blown, give the young kids an opportunity, a chance to play, are finally going to get their wish, and we'll see how it ends up. And listen, I have the Jets as a wild card team right now. But one big trade can happen, and all of a sudden the Jets are, a bona fide playoff team. But that's not to say that, certain teams in cap jail, as I like to call it, that are over the cap now, so they can't go to somebody and say, hey, you're X million over the cap. What's it going to take to get so-and-so so you can be cap compliant? And so happens to be a second line center who you can just plug into your lineup, right? And I think there's jobs there for Lambert. I think there's jobs there for Chibikov if they want them. Cole Perfetti, I think, has a job at center or Wayne if he wants it. But again, it's coming off of his most games played in his professional career that hasn't been short circuited because of injury and or COVID and or the unique trajectory that his career has taken. So all in all, I think as much as there's uncertainty in Winnipeg, for me it's also an excitement with the new head coach. He's having an analytics summit with his coaches in Winnipeg this week. I was reading an article with Mike McIntyre and Ken Weave, and they're really going to be a coaching staff that seems to want to dig into numbers and analytics and how that helps the team as a whole. Better late than never, I suppose. But Arnio is very bullish on what he thinks this team can accomplish. Now, is the coach going to say anything less than that? No. He didn't come out and say, no, we suck. We don't have enough. He's not going to say that. He's going to paint a positive picture.
Of course he is.
So, coach says Jets don't have a chance to make the playoffs. No.
Of course he is.
He's not going to come out and say that.
Well, Well, let me add to this. Let me add to what you're saying. I don't
Yep.
agree with
Yeah, go
you.
ahead.
I don't agree with you on the defense. I don't think there's that many opportunities opened up unless there's an injury. Right now, I think the six that I mentioned, those are your top six. They will, if they're healthy and they get through training camp and there's no other trades or signings or blockbuster deals, those six will be in the starting lineup and Colin Miller will be in the press box. The other guys go down to the minors and they wait for their opportunity through injury or through poor play or otherwise. On the front end, I agree with you. I think there's lots of opportunity. And I know they signed a lot of these guys, like again, they're minor leaguers and they're going to fill spots on the Moose. They may be the Black Aces that travel with the team, but I see opportunity here. I think there's opportunity for Gustafson. I think there's opportunity for both Lambert and for Chibrikov. They're both smaller guys. Chibrikov is very small. He's like 5'10", but he's very good. I think there's opportunity for him and Lambert. Whether that's in the second line center, I don't know. I think there's also opportunity, and fans should not forget this. I think there's an opportunity for Colby Barlow. He had a very good year in junior.
Oh,
He's very close. They say depending upon what happens, and he's a centerman, depending on what happens, he could come to camp and impress the socks out of the coaches, and he could end up winning that second line center spot. So I'm just putting that as a dark horse. I think either way he ends up in the Moose, he's not going back to junior because he signed a contract. So he's going to be with the Moose for sure. I have a feeling he could especially if Namestnikov and Lambert, they'll kind of shine there and they could fit Namestnikov and Lambert into other spots in the lineup because of all the other openings. I think you could see Colby Barlow in that second line center. And also don't forget this, Rutger McGroarty. I still think, why is it so quiet with that situation? Do not put it past Kevin Cheveldayoff, the man who's able to work out lots of things and do it very quietly without all this media. I say one of two things could very easily happen. They somehow come to an agreement with Rutger McGroarty. He eats some humble pie. We talked later about hockey players in this environment that's created to make arrogant jerks. I think if it's true what was written in the media, he came across being very arrogant. And I think, hello. Hey, we're having a radio show here, right? Just like my wife just comes in. She needs the stapler. So there you go. But you could have Rutger McGroarty say, you know what? I'm going to sign my contract and I'm going to come to camp, and he earns that second line center spot because I think he's even further down the road than Colby Barlow in terms of his development. So I think you could see even Rutger McGroarty in second line. Or the other thing could still happen is, what's to say that Kevin Cheveldayoff doesn't trade away Rutger McGroarty, especially if you can get him to commit to signing to the team that he trades him to. Now they've got immediate value, a second line center, a first line center prospect. They get in return somebody who can be a second line center. So I'm just saying it's not all said and done. I think stuff is still going on. We don't hear anything about it. So
we're working with the.
Sorry, I'm just going to say I'm not penciling in anybody in that second center spot. I think anybody could be in there, and we don't even know all the options yet because I'm still hopeful that Rutger McGroarty signs that contract and comes in and earns the second line center job, not has it handed to him on a silver platter. So that's my opinion. But anyway.
I would like nothing more than to see Rutger in a Jets jersey. And if anybody can wiggle out of that scenario, I think it is Kevin Cheveldayoff. But that's
we'll see.
Besides the point.
We will see. Yep.
What has disappointed you so far this offseason? Is there something that disappointed you or caught you off guard?
No. Actually, not. I wouldn't say disappoint. What's always disappointing? I wouldn't say disappointing is not the right word. It's a shame. It's just the way. Unrestricted free agency has come about. That's just the way it is. And it's really a shame. Like the days of seeing somebody play their whole career in a uniform, in one uniform, I think that's like the hula hoop, the pet rock, and the dinosaur. Those are all things from the past, and we're never going to see them again. The days of like a Stevie Eiserman, or you look at, if you thought anybody was going to stay in one jersey for their whole career, it would be Steven Stamkos. Nope. And now it's like Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, maybe Connor McDavid. Like I'm just saying that it's all about money now. As much as it is about having great players, it's about money. And so to me, the one thing that's kind of sad is seeing players leaving situations for other situations, and for the money, for like I think of Montour or Montador there for is it Montour, right? For Brennan Montour for Florida, that he leaves he's with the Panthers his whole career, and now he goes to play for the Kraken. It's going to be so weird to see him in a Kraken jersey, but they were willing to pay the money. Florida couldn't afford him, and so that's the part that's kind of weird. Is you got, I think this season, I don't know what you think, but I'm just looking through here, just looking at all the names. Like there were a lot of free agents this year, a lot of unrestricted free agents. There's a lot of guys on new teams, a lot of guys changing teams this offseason. And it's, I guess one side of me maybe as a fan says, oh, it's exciting, all the change, the turnover. Yeah, okay, I guess you could say that. Then there's a part of me that says, I kind of like it when players stay with their same team. It's easy to keep track of teams and how they're doing. And I don't, that's maybe a part that's a little bit sad or disappointing, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
But
no. I also think along those lines. I also think along those lines, there's a lot of guys been signed for a stupid amounts of money that general managers clearly haven't learned their lesson. There was over $1 billion in money spent on July the 1st. Do we need these players, and we need them now? We need them at the price that they want, or our teams are going to be not very good. And then 2 years later, a quarter and them wind up on buyout waivers.
Yeah,
I'll never understand it.
I know.
It's impulsive buying at its finest.
I know. But it was like the Jets with Wheeler, right? It's almost like you have to sign if you want to get him signed, or if you want him to sign, you have to do the ridiculous amount of years. And it's almost like a team has to say, you know what, if we decide whatever it is, I think now like the number that's been really popular this year is 8-year deals for guys in their late 20s that are coming into UFA status.
Yep.
And so they're signing these guys into their mid 30s, like 35, 36. Wheeler was even into 38. And I'm just saying, it's almost like you got to sign them to these deals. And it's like there's this understanding with general managers that we know it's an 8-year deal. We got to sign him to 8. We're probably going to get, if we can get 5 or 6 really good years out of him, even if he starts to, to diminish year 7 and year 8, we could probably live with year 7 in a smaller role, and year 8, we can buy him out, or year 7. Like it's almost like the cost of doing the business is we got to do this because we're never going to get him like in his prime now. We're never going to get him to sign a 3-year deal or a 5-year deal, which makes way more sense. We got to sign him to 8, but we know we're not going to get 8 out of him. We'll be lucky to get 6, maybe 7. You know what I'm saying? Like it's what everybody has to do. Like you just look at these deals. It's like guys are signing to their late 30s. Really? You don't think that eventually like the law of diminishing returns is going to come into play here? But I know. I'm just looking here. Let me go here. Right out of the gate.
Really quickly, Rich, just on the way out while you're talking about that. Another team I want to ask you about, I know we only got 2 minutes left. We go a little over, my apologies, is the Calgary Flames. What do you think of their rebuild? They moved on from Jacob Markstrom. They've moved on from a couple of other high-end players. They signed Yegor Sharangovich to a contract extension. Do you like what they're doing in Calgary, rebuilding this Brit by Brit?
Well, I think they have to start over, right? That's what Calgary's really doing. I mean, they've really decided we're not gonna complete rebuild, but it's kind of like I'm gonna call it like a half rebuild, or kind of a we're not completely rebuilding, but we're almost rebuilding.
Retool is too strong a word, I think.
Yeah.
Is it?
Retool, yeah, or just like a reset. I don't know. I guess you want to say a reset, but it just, I mean, they've got a few good players there. Uyghur's a good defenseman. Nazem Kadri's a good hockey player. Like they got some good pieces there. But is Calgary going to be a playoff team this year? I don't think so. But I'm just looking here, just looking at all these signings on July 1st. Jake Gensel, to 36 years old, he's getting $9 million a year. If he plays till he's 36, and he's not exactly injury free. The guy has had a few injuries. So you're going to pay him $9 million up until he's 36 years old. Kulikov, they sign, okay, mind you, it's only $1 million a year, but 4-year deal at age 33 years old. Like Chris Tanev, the Leafs signed Chris Tanev to a 6-year deal for $4.5 million a year till he's age 40. I don't know. Like, did he find the fountain of youth in his backyard? Was he like making in the backyard doing a little bit of work for the deck, and he hit a fountain of youth and it sprung up and he suddenly lost 10 years of age? Chris Tanev is 34 and they signed him till he's 40 years old at $4.5 million a year. Like, some of these things, you just look at this thing, it makes no sense, but I think you have to play this game. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, the Leafs again, $3.5 million till he's 37 years old. Like, Elias Lundholm signs a free $7.7 million with the Bruins till he's 37 years old. Like, I agree with you. I don't think anybody learns their lesson. And I think it's just, I think teams, I would say this again, teams are forced to make these deals because they know they're not going to get these guys signed if they do it for shorter years. So they just add the extra years. They say, okay. And they just figure if we can get 6 out of the 8 or 5 out of the 7, we're happy. That'll be somebody else's problem 7 years from now or 6 years from now.
But here's the problem. Like, wouldn't it be for a general manager wise to do like a short-term 2-year deal, offer more money, but have less security?
But they won't sign it. That's what I'm saying. The players won't sign it. Jacob Slavin,
right. Okay, fair enough.
8 years, $6.5 million with the Carolina re-signs till he's 38 and a half years old. Yeah, sure. If Jacob Slavin is playing at the level he's playing now at 38 and a half years old at $6.5 million, then fress ich ein Besen, which means then I'll eat a broom. It's a great German saying. You know why I say that? Because it's never going to happen. Jacob Slavin's play will start going like this at about age 35.
Yeah.
You look at these deals, they're nuts.
Just quickly, let's on the way out.
Yeah. Jonathan Marchessault show, $5.5 million till he's 39 years old. I mean, Predators again, whatever.
Okay, so really quickly, just on the way out, what did you learn about this season? What did you enjoy about this season? Because it is the end of the 23-24 season.
What I liked for the most part, the level of play was really good. I like that younger players are getting more of an opportunity, not because they necessarily earn it otherwise, but because of the way the salary cap is now. You play your very best players a lot of money, and those middle range players you don't have a lot of because you can't afford them. You got some of them, and then you need a lot of young players at entry level deals or very cap friendly deals in order to fill out your roster. And those young players are getting lots of opportunities to play. And I love that about the NHL. That part is great because it used to be not too long ago, maybe 15 years ago, nobody wanted to have young players play. It's like, I don't want a young player. I don't want a young player. It was all about veterans, veterans, veterans. And I think that's completely changed. And that part I really like about the NHL. How about you?
Yeah, no, I learned a lot. I think contrary to what a lot of people say and what the naysayers like to say, the NHL on the ice, I don't think the product has been as good as it is. The product is fast. The product is unpredictable. The product is very watchable. Off the ice, that's another whole story for what we talked about, at the beginning of the show. Business is booming for the NHL. It's the second most watched playoffs in North America in some time, that being Canada and the US. Um, Expansion seems to be on a high. Um, Expansion seems to be on a high.
Yeah.
As far as interest level goes, there's a new team coming into Utah. Seems like the door is finally closed on Arizona to the Alex Murillo's officially walked away from the Coyotes franchise after his land agreement kind of fell apart, which I'm pretty sure now that Jerry Bettman and them saw coming, which is why they moved the franchise to begin with. But yeah, I just think hockey's in a much better place than some other sports, and it's growing at their own pace. I mean, I have friends in the U.S. that, you know, they watched one Stanley Cup playoff game, and they're much more intrigued by that than over the NBA playoffs, which seems to have a lot of 4 and 5 game series, especially earlier on. Hence, your NBA final also being 5 games. The NHL, I think, of the major 4 sports, is one of the only ones to get their playoffs and get their season right. Which to get their season absolutely right with, the intrigue going into the playoffs. And, in other sports, you don't get upsets in the playoffs. You get upsets, but they're few and far between. There's no upsets in the playoffs. You're 8 versus 1. Yeah, that's an upset anywhere else. But
Yeah.
you know what I'm trying to say. The team's in a really good place. You the playoff race at the last day of the season. Florida gets in on the last day of the year last year. They go to the Cup final. They come back and they win it this year. Hockey's in a very good place, contrary to what a lot of people say on the ice, business wise. You got just the AHL, Coachella Valley, 2 straight Calder Cup finals, non-traditional hockey market. It's growing. It's growing. You get your players out of in the middle of nowhere. But are popping up, and that's good for the game. And hockey in South Florida now, they have the East champion there for 5 years in a row. Hockey's in a good place, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go, including the new Utah Hockey Club, which begins play in 2 short months. And that was a long-winded answer, but that's I'm just happy with where the game is at.
I agree.
Could there be some fixes? Absolutely. I'm not here to grow on that tonight. It's good where it is. Let's work on it. Let's go. Let's go for another Stanley Cup. But first, a 2-month break. Thank you, Rich, for doing this season. Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I look forward to next year. I agree with you. The Jets, I think it's going to be. Are the Jets going to be, after the regular season next year, in the 4th place overall? I don't think so. And you know what? I'd rather not that they're not, because then we get so disappointed if they get knocked out in the first round. I'd rather be like you. I'd rather have them have some young players, some hungry guys. They come in, they scrap and they fight, and they get a wild card position. And then they're the underdog, and anything can happen. And Hellebuck gets hot, and then away you go. So I look forward to the Jets being a young, surprising, up-and-coming team with lots of opportunity for young players. That's what I look forward to.
All right. That is it for Red Betty, Michael John. That is the end of the 2023-2024 season. I'm about to step outside from where I am and enjoy the remaining part of daylight. Yep, something like that. might be in the cards in the not too distant future. Thank you, Rhett, for joining me. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of the off season, and we'll be back in early October. For Rhett Petty, Michael Justin, have a great, safe remainder of the summer, and we'll talk to you in about 2 months. Bye for now.